Hey everybody, my name is Danny Dumas, and this is the Earn Your Title podcast. I am excited to have my favorite guest. He's my favorite guest because he's my dad, and it's a pretty cool opportunity to have to come and talk to him. Now, I don't want to talk to him just because he's my dad, and I think the obvious topic would be to how to raise an amazing son, but that is not what we're talking about today. He, over the course of the last maybe 40 years, has been doing marriage counseling. And he does pre-marriage counseling. So you want to get married, you come together for a couple weeks and kind of talks you through that. But what I would really like him to talk about is that the actual one-on-one counseling, most of what he does is talk to men that are going through problems in their relationship. So he is an expert. I can speak from experience. As a little kid, we'd be watching a movie, he'd get a phone call, and he would counsel someone at 10 o'clock at night. And I know personally, I've had people come up. We share the same name. I'm Danny Dumas. Daniel Dumas. He's Daniel Dumas. Most people call me Danny. Most people call him Dan. I've had strangers come up when they hear my name. They say, "Is your dad Dan Dumas?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "He saved my marriage, hands down. If it wasn't for him." So he has a lot to say. Dad, why don't you kind of tell us how you started, how you got into that? I mean, that's not everybody. Is their career path? How does that happen? How did you get started in like family ministry and marriage counseling?
Well, I'm part of the ministry at the Apostolic Church, and involved initially with music ministry.
Right.
But I found that I got involved. I just was willing to do whatever I could, and I had a psychology minor, and my dad actually always mentored me. My dad, as you know, was a psychiatrist, and I just always felt like that there was something to it. I know as a young person, for some reason, people would always come up to me and say, "I don't know why I'm telling you this, but it just seemed like I had a destiny with being a counselor, and there was a need at the church, and I did all the wedding ceremonies, preparation for that, and in conjunction with that, I just felt like God was leading me to do premarital counseling. I think it's important, to do that. To get anything else, you have to have a degree or whatever, but you can get married. You can just, get the justice of the peace or whatever. And I just felt like counseling, premarital counseling, and then from there, I was able to extend that. People that were having some difficulties, trying to help their learning curve and give them some skills and talents that I believe that God was helping me with. And so it's just been an incredible experience being able to help people in one of the greatest relationships, and that's marriage. Right. I'm just celebrated 46 years, and so thankful for my life partner, Buffy, and your mom, and it's just been a great thing. But it's difficult, living with someone is hard.
Right. How
do you spell marriage? W-O-R-K.
Right.
I think John Maxwell said that.
That's good.
But anyway, it's hard. It's work, but it's the rewards are so awesome. To have someone, a life partner, someone you can share your life with, and I've had a pleasure of doing that, and then trying to help other people do that as well.
Right. Where do you see as men? Where do we mess up? Is it? I imagine it's different stages of your marriage. There's probably different problems. I know, it seems like you have newlywed, and then till you have kids, then you have the kids, little kids, into maybe teenagers, and then teenagers to college, and then empty nesters. Is it the same problems all guys experience, or does that change? What do you see is maybe we'll start with the youngest newlyweds. What problems are they seeing, and what is maybe not an easy fix, but what is something that you could help someone that's currently, I got married, the honeymoon phase is over, but I'm a newlywed, learning how to live with this human who is not like me.
Right. Well, I think probably one of the biggest challenges are expectations. I think going into marriage, we as men, we think it might be nice to have a wife someday and maybe have kids or whatever. And for us, though, it's a challenge to us to have that relationship. We have to purposefully, do the things. And sometimes we don't always know, what's going on in the relationship, because we're more, if I can say, average man is more left brain oriented, which is the logical, problem solving or whatever. Women tend to have that bilateral connection between both right and left, and they have a marriage manual built right into them. But we do things on purpose, and sometimes we have an expectation, or sometimes that we really don't know. We're put tab A in slot B, and if we don't see that, sometimes we don't recognize, what's needed in the relational part. We can be the provider. We can go out and go to work and bring home, and take care of that, make sure things are fixed in the house or whatever. But sometimes when it comes to the relationship part, and being able to recognize the needs, that our wife has, and then that our children have, and that evolves. It just, sometimes when you get started, you just really don't have a clue.
In the newlywed phase, you're newly married. What are maybe the top 2 or 3 things that newly married men struggle with? What are those 1, 2, or 3 things? And then what is maybe something, maybe a mindset, or just something that they can realize that they are doing or maybe aren't doing to kind of help them go in the right direction?
Okay. Well, I think that I think there's roles that we take. I think if it depends on the marriage that we observed, it depends on the role that our father had in the home. And then in some instances now, there maybe there wasn't a male present. And so we're trying to figure out what does it mean to be the head of the household and to be in charge, so to speak. And that's difficult sometimes to figure that all out, to say it's really built into us. Well, it is, but we have to work at that. And sometimes the relationship part, just understanding I can go to work and do that and supply all the needs. But when it comes to relationships, just understanding that there's more to it than just, going to work and coming home and paying the bills. There's the relationship part that we as men sometimes aren't the greatest at doing that and understanding it. We're more problem solving and whereas our wives have a marriage manual built right into them. That's the way God made them, and sometimes we have to learn that. And the expectations, we do things intentionally. And so sometimes we do these things, and maybe if we're not recognized, husbands like to be honored, wives like to be cherished and know that they're valuable. And sometimes I see that they're doing these things, but maybe they're not being appreciated as much as they think they should be, or, I'm doing this and doing this. And
how do you address, let's say you never saw your dad do the dishes once in his life, because that was the woman's job in your way you grew up. So
right.
You decide, I'm not going to be like my dad. I want to help. I didn't like that part of my dad, so I'm going to do the dishes. So you come home, the dishes are clean, and your wife walks in the door and goes past you.
Right.
And you're like, what's going on? You didn't appreciate that?
Right.
And I think, is that wrong for a guy to feel like that? Or is there a way to tell your wife, hey, I know this might not be a big deal to you, but I was trying. Like, how do you communicate that you were going above and beyond, and you would like to be appreciated? Because it doesn't sound manly to say, hey, I want you to say thank you. But I think sometimes, if that's your love language,
right.
we really need that.
That's right.
How do you communicate that with your wife where,
that's right.
Man, it really bothered me that I spent all day cleaning the house and you didn't say anything.
Right. Well, I just think you're honest with that, and you have to have a forum. You have to have something in place, and that's one of the things that I try to teach new couples, that you have to have a way of processing things. When you get these feelings and you get these thoughts and things happen in your marriage that can be conflict or be difficult, and it's starting to intrude into your lifestyle, you have to have a way to sit down and have a conversation. And I try to teach that, where you're one person's talking, one person's listening.
Do you say hey, we need to talk? Or is it a weekly thing? What's your advice? Do you say, hey, every week, let's sit down and just talk how the week went, good, bad, ugly,
right.
Planning?
Yeah.
Is there a certain way, or is it every couple's kind of different?
I think every couple's different. In most cases now, both the husband and the wife are out working outside the home. It's not like it used to be. And of course, once you get, your children, get kids or whatever, and then even after that, they put them in a daycare because you need the income and both of you have to work. And that makes it difficult, and there's difficulties, there's problems going on, but you have to be able to stop. You have to plan something. I think, having a a time, whether it's going out on a date, or you just have to plan time to be together, especially once the children come, where you can sit down and you have a process, that you go through.
What does that process look like? What do you think?
Well, I think that, if something's, if it's invading and it's distracting you from doing the things that you need to do, you need to be able to sit down and say, okay, I just want you to know when you did this or said this, this is the way I'm feeling. And I teach it. It's called drive-through talking. It's like you go to McDonald's and you say, I want a strawberry shake and a Big Mac and order fries. And the lady comes back and says, oh, you want a chocolate shake and a Big Mac and order fries? I said, no, that's not what I said. I said I wanted a strawberry shake. Sometimes you say things and you try to plan out. We as men have to plan what we're going to do. And sometimes it's misconstrued. That's not really what I said. Or they can say, well, this is the way I felt. This is what I thought you were saying. And you can clear it up and say, oh, okay, well, let's try that again. You just have to have room to make mistakes and have room to be flexible and say, let's try it again. And or you can say the timing has to be right too.
Right.
There's certain times to have the discussion, certain times not, especially when you have kids. And now's not a good time. But you have to be able to say, now's not a good time, but later on, after we get the kids in bed, then let's get together and you talk about it, and it's not accusing, it's not demanding. You can't demand those things. You just say, this is what's going on. This is the way I feel. And, we need to, maybe there's something we can do. I did these things like the one guy said he went to a marriage seminar and the guy told him, said, you need to do something for your wife. And so on his way home, didn't have any money. He bought a bouquet of flowers and didn't have money, but he put it on his charge card. He's going to be paying it off, walked in the door with it behind his back, opened the door and said, honey, look, and gave her the flowers and she put them in a vase. And she started telling him all the things that had happened that day. The dishwasher overflowed and the dog ran. Well, what about the flowers? I mean, he had to plan that, he had to consciously think about it, but what about the flowers? And so I just think that when we do things, not always, we like to be recognized that we do. That's honoring us because we have to plan. We plan those things, we structure those things. It comes naturally for a woman to be relational and do all of those things. And if we just like to be, recognized that, yeah, I put forth an effort and my wife is so awesome at doing that with me, she'll acknowledge me and doing things, knowing that I did some things. And, but then you have to say, you know what, maybe I get acknowledged, maybe I don't, but that can't be play the love game sometimes.
Right.
I see them say that, well, they come in to see me and they say, well, I thought when I got married, this would be happening or this would be happening. You get these expectations. But marriage is an empty container, and whatever is in there is what you put in there, trust and, being able to rely on each other and support and all of those things. But if you don't put it in there, it's not going to be in there. Sometimes we expect it just to be there. And no, sometimes it'll happen, sometimes not. But you have to just go on and say, well, but if it starts to influence you and you're not, you're closing your spirits to each other. We're mind, body, and spirit, and we need to be open. If physically we're, you know what I'm saying. Yeah. You just don't, you feel a disconnect to that person, then you need to try to get and take care of it, not let it go a long time, because then it gets, more and more difficult to, come back together. But you have to have a system where you sit down and the right timing and the right attitudes with yourselves, and you're rested, and you can say, this is what's going on, and be able to take the problem and set it out in front of the two of you, and not necessarily address it toward that person, because then they think they're the problem when it's not maybe not that, Right. This is how I feel. And then give them a chance. They're listening, and you talk, and they can give you that feedback. Yeah, this is what you're saying, and this is what you felt, or yeah, or no, that's not what I meant. And you clear that all up and start over again, and find some kind of resolution that you keep going. But as I was saying, sometimes I say, if you loved me, you would do this or do that or whatever. You'd pick up your clothes or whatever. Well, it's not about whether or not I love you. It's you need to pick up your clothes.
Right.
There's things that we just need to do responsibly, and it's sending a message. But it can't be about love. You can't have that scoreboard
right.
that's going.
I think as guys, we're in general more competitive, and you do want to win. You keep an internal score. I've done more than you, so I'm winning, but that's really dumb. because
Right.
you can't win if you're on the same team. I mean, you can win. You can't beat your spouse.
No.
Like either physically or in a game. Like you shouldn't do that. Like, so why are you keeping score that you did more or less? And I have found that there's some things that I just have to let go. Like there's, I think anytime you're in a relationship, there's things that somebody else does that you don't like. Like, for instance, I have a very small one, and I've literally never brought it up. Andrea does listen to this podcast, so this might be the first time. She puts the toilet roll backwards so that the toilet paper comes toward between the wall and the toilet roll. And I've never said anything to her, but every single time I get in the bathroom, I flip it around the other way. And what I learned, her parents were here this summer, they do the same thing. They do it wrong. I'm sure I'm right. I've seen the patent. Toilet goes over the top. So I know, but that's, to me, it would be something that I could say, hey, that bothers me when you do this, but it doesn't bother me that much. And I just fix it. I just change it. And it's not it's not an issue. And I think we have to kind of just, sometimes things you're just not going to like it.
Right.
And that's okay. Like, as long as it's not affecting you, like you're getting bitter.
Sure.
I think that's a valid skill, just to go, hey, you know what? This is annoying, but every single time, if it annoys me, I'm going to change it. If she does it, she can change it back. And we'll just flip the toilet roll back and forth for the next 40, 50 years.
I think, you have to pick your battles.
Yeah.
But obviously you need to have a time and a place that, there's something's going on. We've designed something where we can get together. Otherwise, you don't have hope. Otherwise, you just sweep it under, like you said, and sometimes bitterness, comes, and because you want to resolve something. And it has to be something that you can design and something you can go and know. Yeah, it's time to have one of those meetings, and you know what it takes to have that happen. And you go through it, and one person talks, the other person listens, and then you give feedback, and then you switch it over, and then try to find resolution if you don't. Or maybe sometimes it can be so emotional things. Maybe it's something that should have been taken care of, and it's actually deeper than you thought, and you realize this is not going to work, and you have to say, okay, this is not working. We need to table it, but we'll come back.
Let me ask this. When you're in a relationship and it's not working, how do you know when you can deal with it versus when you need to go outside to get help? When do you think that break even, like that? What are the things that you're seeing in your relationship that say, I need to go and get professional counseling?
Right. Well, I just think that, like I said, if it starts to invade your lives, you're losing the physical realm. Your spirits are closing to each other, and you're just basically coexisting. You're not really moving forward. That you're kind of at a standstill, and it's affecting you. You're having a difficult time with at work. You're thinking about it, and you come home and you're walking on eggshells, and and you're not sure, and maybe you haven't figured a way out of communicating with each other without it turning into an argument or what, and you need to have a mediator. You need to have someone. But sometimes I've noticed, and I see this happening, a couple will come in, but really what they're wanting to do is throw their spouse under the bus in front of someone. And I'm careful not to, no, we're not, that has to be mediated, but it's good to get a third opinion, so to speak. It's good to get someone that can step back and look and evaluate and give you some suggestions. The saying is, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. Right. And if you want something different, if you want to take your marriage to a different level, if you want to take your parenting skills to a different level, sometimes you need to get some assistance, get some help that can make suggestions, and they can observe and listen to what you're saying, and they can give you that feedback, that drive-through talking back to you and say, well, this is what I'm hearing, and it seems to me that this is what's going on. And they have a chance to stop and say, okay, well, you're seeing that, well, maybe we need to evaluate this. So it's good to get help. And
they say you can't read the label from inside the jar.
Right.
I think that is important, and it helps you. I definitely could see how when you talk to your friends, maybe you're complaining about something and you just want them to take your side.
Right.
And that's not what counseling is, or coaching, whatever you want to call it. It is a objective third-party view of what is right or wrong, with ultimately the goal to be right, not for your spouse to be wrong.
Right.
Like, I think that's important. When you get to the point where you just want to prove that you're right and your spouse is wrong, there's almost no hope. You have to prove that there's no proof. You're not proving anything. You're just this is we're trying to make this separate team back to one team.
Right.
So when you're counseling a couple, what is the steps that you usually go to take? What would a counseling session look like? Say they're struggling in their marriage, they're not communicating effectively. When they come home, they're just cohabitating. What does it, how long does it usually take, or what are the steps? What are the first few things you do? So if they're going to go to marriage counseling, what steps and what should they expect from like a man's point of view? Is it going to come in? They're going to bash you and tell you how bad you are? Like what is the normal process of counseling, and how long do you usually counsel with a couple? Well,
I think, that's all depending on where they're actually at in their relationship and what they have built in as far as any kind of resolution or whatever. But I find that I try to always acknowledge when a husband and wife come in, that I really acknowledge the husband for doing that, because they we feel like, oh, we got this, I don't need help. I can figure this out. I'm the man. I can do this, But for them to come in and even realize that there's going to be some things said about them, there we go back to the criticism and the critique, because we want to be honored. We want to feel like what we're doing is right, or, that we're not lacking. Sometimes as men, we don't want to admit that we just don't have a clue and I don't know what's going on here. Just to acknowledge that, and then just try to, see where they're at, and, where you're at and where would you like to go and what's going on, and give them both an opportunity, to talk and verbalize. And then what I like to do is when they're explaining something to I like to allow the other person to say, are you hearing what do you think they just said? What
right.
And that way I can just kind of mediate that. And that's sort of, I try to do something, with the three of us that ultimately teach them how to do this with themselves.
Right.
Learning how someone has to listen, and listening involves closing your mouth. and men tend to think first and feel second. And sometimes it takes time, when someone's talking, for a man to answer. I get a young couple in and I say, why do you want to get married? And the answer is, well, I'm in love with her, or I'm in love with him, or whatever. Sometimes the guy will go, and I'm waiting to hear that. And they finally go, oh yeah, I'm in love with her. But if you ask her first, she'll say, well, he's my, my life partner. I've been praying for him, and I love him, and he makes me feel special. He honors me and cherishes me. And then the guy goes, he kind of gets on board, but it's hard for us. You ask a man, how do you feel? He'll go, I don't know.
With my hands.
Let me think about it. Right. Yeah, with my hands. I don't know. Let me think about it. So we have to process it. Everyone's different, everyone's not able to be in touch with those things. When you get in a session, there are feelings, there are things that are brought up, sometimes personal things, very hurtful things that have happened, things that have been said. So then you try to listen to all that, sort it all out, and then come up with a plan of action, to have them move in a different direction. As I said, do something different, and to listen to each other. And as you mentioned about the love languages, recognize that we're a mechanism. I mean, we need the fuel, just like our bodies. We need hydration, we need nutrients, we need all of those things. And a marriage is the same way. There's certain things that need to be in place, and you learn what those are, and you learn how to energize your marriage. You either have a chance to bless or to curse, to give or to take away. And when it feels like things are being taken away, when it feels like you're going bankrupt, or it feels like your level, your gauge is, have to help them to recognize the other person's on fumes. Well, I thought I did this, and especially we as men, well, I'm bringing home the money. We've got food, we've got lights, we got heat, we got this and there. What else do I need to do, And I told her I loved her when I married her, and it still stands. But no, we have to be able to, things that we do and say, and the languages, affirmation, and gifts sometimes, and physical touch sometimes. And, but we're able to go and, we're so compartmentalized. We're over here and we do this, and then we come out of that compartment. But a woman, the way God built her, she's just everything flows, everything goes through that. and she can recognize and the emotions and the atmosphere. She can remember all of those things, and we have to recognize that. There's the books, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, or whatever it is. Well, that's really not that true. It's not that different, but there are some differences because that's the way God made us,
right?
And we have to learn how to, stamp something important on their forehead, like whatever it is, If you're a football player, maybe right now you're stamped, go blue. That's important. So, you have to, she needs to know that you cherish her like you do all your other things, your hobbies and your new shotgun or whatever it is. She needs to know she's more than that, and they want to be cherished. They want to know that you care about them. And we have to do things. We have to show them, by the actions and things that we do. But sometimes they don't acknowledge that, and it has to be okay. We learn, and it's a evolving process. You both are going through changes. You both are growing, and you have to fall in love with that new person because they're going to change. Right. They're not going to be the same. They're not going to look the same. They're not going to act the same. It's going to evolve, especially if you have children, and you have to continually. I say when I talk about marriage vows, the vows that we make, that we say to each other, and then after that, those are the easiest thing to say. You might be nervous the day of it when you say, I do, but the hard and the difficult part is you have to relive that every day after that. You have to be wanting to stay in this relationship because the statistics are very poor, for successes. And because it's just so easy if you don't have the feelings anymore that you think accompany love. Right. Well, love's not a feeling. There are feelings that accompany what goes on when you love someone. But if those feelings leave, does that mean, I'm no longer in love with this person? I have fallen out of it. It's not something you fall in and fall out of. But sometimes we think we can just do that,
I think sometimes this is a trap in a successful relationship where you start to see your spouse as your friend, which obviously you're friendly with your spouse and you have fun. But like saying my spouse is my best friend, that's lowering her to another level.
Right.
She's your wife. That is a higher level than friendship. And I think sometimes you might be in a relationship where she is your. And I think there's half of marriages end in divorce.
Right.
And then I heard the next statistic is the 50% that stay married, 25% of them aren't happy,
right,
or just not anything.
Right.
And I think there's a real danger in the mediocre marriage where, like, what, she's a nice lady. She's not mean. She cleans the house. I bring the money home.
Right.
We don't argue. But I think there's something more to marriage than friendship. Like, obviously, I'm not saying you shouldn't be friends with your wife. I'm saying that you shouldn't say she's my best friend. That should be somebody else who's your best friend,
right,
because she is your wife. And that is, I think there's danger in the just being okay with it, because that's not what I don't think God designed us to just have a lukewarm marriage.
Well,
we're all in. It should be all the good things of a relationship with a wife, not your friend. Because I can go without seeing my best friend for a couple of years and we're still best friends.
Sure,
I can never do that with my wife. That would be unacceptable. So I think there's some danger in just being okay, because it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
And even maybe I don't want to say you married the wrong person, but the person you married maybe is not the person who you thought they were going to be.
Right.
You can still have all that stuff. You make a decision.
You do.
To love. That's a verb. It's an action. And it's a daily occurrence.
Well, those are all the vow. For better, for worse, richer, for poorer, covers finances, in sickness and in health, covers physiology.
Right.
Because things happen. But I think that, the Bible teaches in Ephesians, husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. And there's no woman. And then it talks about women submitting themselves unto her husband as unto the Lord. Sometimes that's misconstrued that, I'm the man's the head and the woman's the doormat and I'm the captain and she's no, it's not like that at all. There's any woman that has a husband that is honoring her and cherishing her. And I call it an umbrella. You get to raise this umbrella, and it's protection, it's guidance, it's taking care of things, and she comes underneath that, and and so you don't really, but you can't put the umbrella up. You have it, but you can't use it until you get married, And it's like, I can see, I've never seen a couple do this, but I've said that, And one of the vows that I shared with the couple once, I said, and I think they should have in the vows, and all the things that I don't know about you that I'm going to find out once we start living together, I do. I accept that. And one of the couples asked me, Pastor Dumas, did you hear we entered that into our vows? I thought, yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's cool.
But those things happen,
Right.
And you don't really know that person. You get to know them, and you have to say, I do. Whatever you become, I'm with you. I'm committed. Sometimes the commitment's there, and you're dedicated to that no matter what happens. And it's work, but it's so beneficial. I mean, there's nothing greater than the relationship. It's the covenant relationship, between two people. All the other covenant relationships were between God and man, but this is a covenant relationship that God designed to be between two people. And when he says, love your wives as Christ loved the church, there's no greater example. There's no greater challenge. I mean, if you have a relationship with God and you know how much you appreciate that, then the wives can be the same way. And, and to have the fruit of the Spirit manifest in your life. I'm so thankful to have a wife that has the spiritual gifts, if I can say it, hanging, growing from her tree, love, joy, peace, long-suffering, meekness, kindness, all of those things. And then obviously I think ultimately you need to have forgiveness. Mm-hmm. You need to have a way. That's part of the way of being able to deal with things. And forgiveness doesn't require the participation of the other person, because if it did, they could keep you from doing something that God has commanded you to do. And forgetting is not part of the forgiveness process. Forgive and forget. Well, no, you don't forget it. Because if that's all, if we had to forget, then our memories would only be good enough to get us to work and how to get back home, But when you remember how you worked it out, and the stumbling blocks you turn into stepping stones in your relationship, and you move forward, and then together you're a team. I don't care. Come on, whatever it is, come our way. Let things happen, whether it's financial or relational or whatever. We can do this because together we can do this because we have a system. And we're going to put it through that system. And we're going to take the problem, and we're going to set it out, and together we're going to resolve that or do our best. And then the rest of the time, I tell them, look, work on your problems, but the rest of the time, treat each other like it's somebody that you really like, and be as nice as you can to them, and try to build things instead of tearing things down. Try to add to, not take away. But it's a challenge, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, because we're flawed. Right. We're not the same. Like God's the same all the time, but we're not. And I'm willing to do things, but I may not be able. But God's always not only willing, but He's able. And if you have Him in your life, I think that's important, that you focus on that and ask Him to help you, guide you, direct you, as a husband, as a wife, and together you can do. All things are possible. And but it's great. Like I said, 46 years have been amazing, and it's been work. But hey, the benefits are so amazing. And there's no one. I say this, and I'll say this. I've said this publicly. If God made anything greater than Buffy, my wife, your mom, He kept it for Himself. I mean, I look at it that way, right. And I hope she knows that. And anyway, Buffy, if you're watching this, I hope you know that.
She said she listened, so get you some points. So we're gonna, in closing, we've talked about some of the, the negative things we do. What are maybe 2 or 3 things a guy can do on a daily basis that is just going to be good for his relationship? What are those? What would be like something they can take home? Like, try today. Hey, maybe you have a lukewarm relationship. Today, go home and what is it?
I think it's understanding, back to those love languages, knowing what that is, knowing that you need to take the time to say goodbye, and when you leave, and say hello when you come home, and ask, have conversation. When you look at the statistics of words that are spoken, a guy speaks 2,000 or 3,000 a day, and a woman speaks 20,000, and you come home and you're done. You're ready to kick back and watch go to your throne and whatever. And she's just getting started, right. And she's wanting to communicate and talk, and to be able to sit down and listen. And I think it's important just to acknowledge, to be with them, to take time, to know I'm putting everything aside, and I'm putting everything else that I could be doing, I'm just going to spend a little bit of time, say, how was your day? What's going on? Is there anything I can do? Anything happening? Just to acknowledge, cherishing her, cherishing the time that you have, and then trying to find out what can I do to be helpful? Can I help with this or that or whatever? And learning how to do the dishes or whatever, the things, and learning how to pick up after yourself, and trying to live in an adult realm, not a parent to child realm or a parent, a teacher to student. Your wife is it's an adult relationship. It's not, I'm the parent, you're the child, or I'm the teacher and you're the student, Right. And sometimes you feel like you're in a classroom. Right. And if you feel like you're in a classroom, that's something you need to work on, or you feel like that you're a kid in the home and they're parenting you. We're not to parent.
Your wife didn't adopt you.
No.
And I think sometimes guys get that harshly. So I work almost exclusively with guys, and I see that is one of the downfalls. So if you're a lady listening, don't treat your husband like your son. You didn't adopt him. He has a mom. Give him the respect he needs, and maybe that he hasn't even deserved. Right. I think there's a lot of that and because maybe guys don't know certain things for whatever reason, and a wife has a mothering instinct, and she starts doing that, and that's not. We shouldn't be our best friends. We should be spouses, and you're not my mom.
And there's times though, like you're sick or whatever. I just had a total hip replacement, and Buffy, my wife, she catered after me for 3 weeks. Right. I could hardly get up or do anything. She was right there. She took care of all my needs for 3 weeks, and she's a full-time career person. Right. And everything that she does in her ministry and everything else. But she took the time, and I was like a kid. I was like a sick kid or whatever. But she took care of me, and she ministered to me and allowed me till I can get up and get going. And then the other thing I want to say, sometimes if you're acting like a kid, then maybe you're soliciting your wife to be, what I'm saying?
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. And sometimes we're not in the basement watching video games. If that's what you're doing, you need to,
be the man.
Be the man.
Yeah.
But sometimes we solicit for acting like a child, and maybe they think the only way I can deal with this is to treat them like I'm their parent, or the teaching thing, Mm-hmm. I want to learn things. There's things that I need to learn, but I'm not there. I'm not in the home for that. Right. So
we're wrapping up. Is there anything I didn't ask that I should have? Any last words of wisdom? Anything that?
Well, I just think that you just have to have a good sense of humor. You're going to be married, and you have to understand. Like I said, you have to weigh things out and understand what actually are crises in your relationship, and what things, sometimes we think, I think Gary Smalley was saying, he gives an example about dropping a little pebble in someone's, hand. What is that? Well, it's a little pebble. But sometimes we can say things, we can, publicly embarrass our spouse just the way we say things and embarrass them. And it was a boulder. Oh, that was just a little comment or whatever. Right. We need to understand sometimes we think it's just a small little thing, but it's a bigger thing. Mm-hmm. We need to be able to evaluate that and understand and be able to say, oh, I'm sorry, and have that drive-through talking to say, when you did this and when you said that, this is how I feel. If you want me to feel differently, you need to do something different. And then it's in our court to do something about that. And we can have that. And but make sure that you're always testing to make sure the spirits are open, that we don't close ourselves up. When our spirits close, our bodies close up. Don't touch me. I don't, go in there and walk away or whatever. Sometimes you have to do that. Right. Time is not right, but you need to continually go back and reevaluate and make sure you keep your spirits open, for the next time when you have to have a crisis, because we're going to. It's never going to end. And but you can have a system, put it through the system, and know that all the rest of the time we're just going to be energizing each other, doing things that are positive, doing things that are giving and not taking away, doing things that are deposits, not withdrawals, and learn what those are. Right. And wives, I can say, if you see your husband doing anything that resembles something you'd like to see him do, acknowledge him.
Right. What gets rewarded gets repeated.
Absolutely. And so
guys, you can send that clip to your wife. I'll put it on. This will be an Instagram clip. Wives, if you see us doing something you want us to keep doing, reward us. Tell us thank you. Yeah. We'll keep doing it.
That's right. That's right.
So this is good stuff. So what I heard you tell me and the guys So we need to have open communication. Sometimes we need to let things just go. It's not that big of a deal. When we're having problems, if we can't communicate it, if the communication is broken down, this relationship is worth saving, and it means it's worth going to get professional help. It's worth swallowing your pride, asking for help, asking for an outside influence, that we need to have a sense of humor, that we need to understand what the love languages our wife speaks. And I'll link to put a link to the book, The 5 Love Languages. It's excellent. That we need to, because you might speak gifts, but they need time. I mean, that's a really important thing to understand. And did I miss any of the other details? Recapping.
Oh, this is
so. A marriage is worth saving. It's one of the most rewarding experiences. Like you said, marriage is spelled work, WORK, and which means you have to do something. It can't be passive. We can't just and don't have a passive, just a boring relationship. I think a marriage can be amazing. So I really encourage you to put this into action. Remember, this is the Earn Your Title podcast, which means you got to earn it every single day. This is Danny Dumas, and that is Dan Dumas, and I will talk to you later.